ASL interpretation. The recordings will be available on our YouTube channel for later viewing. Whether you attend the live session or catch up later, you'll have the opportunity to engage with the material in a way that suits your needs. I encourage you to subscribe to our channel so you can keep up with the latest additions to our video library. We are always looking for suggestions for future webinar topics. If you have a suggestion for topics or speakers, please feel free to send those to us. We can share my email in the chat, or you can share them in the chat. Please keep your microphone set to mute. Just a note, if you do experience any issues with your bandwidth or audio quality, it often helps to disable your camera. As I mentioned, if you'd like, you can enter your name and your organization or community that you're from in the chat box, what you're hoping to get out of today's session, and maybe how you found out about it. If you have any questions during today's session, please feel free to enter those questions into the chat and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. We will also take some additional questions at that time. At the close of today's session, you will see a quick evaluation of today's session pop up in your browser. Please take a moment to complete that survey. It helps us greatly when planning future sessions. And one last reminder, we have, you can visit our Facebook page for information about other upcoming sessions and other topics such as Housing 101, the continuum of options for older adults, and an exciting selection of new topics that we're going to be launching in 2025. You can also check out our website at arrowheadaging.org. So about the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging, the Arrowhead Regional Development Commission and Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging are designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging as the Area Agency on Aging for the planning and service area under the authority of Title III of the Older Americans Act. Minnesota has 7 AAAs across the state that are local connections to older Minnesotans and the community supports they might need as they age. The Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging Planning and Service Area is designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging to include Aiken County, Carlson, Cook, Itasca, Couchiching, Lake, and St. Louis. The Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging is committed to helping older adults maintain their highest level of independence. Area agencies on aging are regional organizations that provide services, supports, and information for just about everything that older adults and their families could need. Now I'm going to take a moment to read the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging's land acknowledgement. As we support our mission to help older adults maintain their highest level of independence, we do this while being respectful of the space we are being welcomed into by Indigenous people. We strive to deepen our understanding of the multiple ways in which people see and understand land and acknowledge the Indigenous people who have had relationships with this land. We also acknowledge the decades of historical trauma, loss, and grief experienced by Indigenous peoples. It is our promise to not only recognize these truths, but also to take action to show support of our Indigenous elders, neighbors, and friends, and understand our place within the past, present, and future of this land. We know this is just one step in recognizing and honoring the sovereignty of tribal nations. So we are honored today to be joined by 2 presenters. Our first presenter is going to be Georgia Lane, who is a senior program developer with the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. And Georgia leads our regional efforts that support organizations and communities in adopting age and dementia-friendly lenses, and helps to engage stakeholders to make meaningful change in their communities. Georgia believes that aging is a gift and is passionate about reframing the way we think, talk, and act about aging. She offers presentations on ageism, age-friendly frameworks, the longevity economy, dementia, social connections, age-friendly businesses, and more. Our second presenter will be Lydia Morgan. Lydia is with Morgan Consulting. She is an age-friendly planning consultant who helps state and municipal governments and communities rethink aging and roles that plans, policy, environment, and language play in empowering us to live with autonomy and dignity as we age. Her experience working in multiple sectors gives her a broad and informed perspective on opportunities for communities to become more livable and inclusive. Lydia has worked with Age-Friendly Minnesota since 2020, and as well as many other numerous cities, counties, and initiatives undertaking an age-friendly work over the last decade. She earned a Master of Regional Planning degree at Cornell University. So I want to thank you, Georgia and Lydia, for joining us today, and I'm going to turn things over to Georgia.
Thanks so much, Brenda, and thanks for everyone for hopping on today on your busy schedules. I see a lot of friendly names and faces here, so glad we can all be here, as well as some new folks. So if this is your first time hearing about Age Friendly Minnesota, welcome. I would love to chat with you more, as would my team members. So our objectives today is to do kind of a high-level overview on Age Friendly Minnesota. We're going to learn a little bit about the multi-sector plan on aging and the awesome work that's been done to date. We're going to share some information on how age-friendly work has taken shape in our Arrowhead region, and then, last but not least, learning about how you can get involved. Next slide, please. All right, next slide. So quick age-friendly overview. So this is really a paradigm that we are adopting in Minnesota. We know that given our changing demographics, we know that our current systems are not created for modern aging. And so Minnesota is part of really a global movement to help seize opportunities and meet challenges that's associated with an older population. Next slide. This is part of a broader ecosystem. When we talk about age-friendly communities and age-friendly work, I know a lot of folks here on this call tend to think about AARP and the awesome work that's done there, but it really is much broader. There are the age-friendly cities that is done in communities and states that are done under the global network of age-friendly communities under AARP, but it is also important to recognize that we have work happening in age-friendly health systems, age-friendly public health, age-friendly universities, and age-friendly states, of which Minnesota is a part. Next slide. If you are new to this work, AARP is the U.S. affiliate of a global network of age-friendly communities, which was launched by the World Health Organization. And this is part of a 5-year process where communities can conduct needs assessments and develop action plans, and then work on implementing and assessing those action plans. It's really a 5-year process in which communities go about this work. It is a way to organize work. It's a way to get work done and to bring together different sectors in the community that are working on a variety of things around our built environment, around social engagement, around civic engagement, lots of different ways. So if you may be part of an age-friendly community network who's already in this process, but if you are interested in learning more, we're happy to connect with you on that. Next slide, please. Since Minnesota has been involved in this work, we've seen a really big uptick in communities who are actually formally joining the AARP network. Here I have highlighted the communities in our region, in our Arrowhead region, who have joined this network, which include Duluth and Virginia as cities. And then we also have 2 counties, which are Cook County and Lake County, who are seeking this who have sought this designation and who are really into that 5-year process. We have also seen some great interest from other communities, a lot up on the Iron Range, including Chisholm, Hibbing, Balkan Township, Mountain Iron, who are in the process, are going to be. We've also been in conversation with folks in Itasca County and Carleton County around this designation. So part of what we're seeing in Minnesota with part of the Age Friendly Minnesota is more folks who are really diving deep and actually seeking this formal designation and doing work in their communities. Next slide. So Age Friendly Minnesota is part of a global movement to prepare for our demographic shifts that ensure that older people are really valued and integrated to communities at a new level. We're trying to flip the script a little bit and reframe the way we think about aging, moving from providing supports and services for older adults to thinking about how we as community members can live and age well throughout our entire life cycle. So it's really shifting the way that we're thinking about aging. More from a them to a we. And this is also work happening on a statewide level through many different ways to help our systems and communities be more inclusive of older adults. Next slide, please. So here's our timeline. In 2019, Governor Walz put in an executive order that established the Governor's Council on Age-Friendly Minnesota. That was right before the pandemic hit. So we did a lot of work throughout the pandemic. And in 2021, this council provided some age-friendly legislation, which included funding for grants. This was very exciting. Our state legislature allocated $6 million in age-friendly community grants, which I'll talk about in a bit. In 2022, we as a state joined AARP's formal network, which was a significant step. In 2023, we launched our grants program, which really kind of started to roll out through 2023 and the first round wrapped up in 2024. And we also launched our second round. And these grant cycles will go through 2026. And a very important date, and this will be covered in part of our calls to action, is that currently the Governor's Council on Age-Friendly Minnesota is set to sunset in 2027. So we have done amazing work and made some great strides, and we are hoping that we can find ways to continue this work beyond 2027. Next slide, please. So here's our council membership. You can see there are 9 state agencies. So this work has been, really had a lot of engagement. Typically, aging work happens under the Department of Human Services, Minnesota Board on Aging, Arrowhead Area Agencies on Aging. We have tend to kind of lived in that world. And I think what a significant change, or what makes Age-Friendly Minnesota different, is that this council is 9 state agencies, representatives from tribal government, and you can see here that we have 5 different community representatives. One of them is whom is from our region, and so it's really been a unique way to approach this work. We've also had strategic partnerships with AARP Minnesota and the Minnesota Leadership Council on Aging to drive this work forward. Next slide, please. So today, there's kind of 4 bodies of work that have happened under the council. You can see them there. Really today, we're going to focus a lot on the Multisector Blueprint for Aging and touch a little bit on age-friendly community grants. But really, this is kind of a high-level overview of the work happening on the blueprint and wanting to get local folks involved in this. Next slide, please. All right, so I am going to share, we've got about a 14-minute video. We can switch to the next slide. Next slide. To talk a little bit about multi-sector plans on aging. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So what are these multi-sector plans on aging? So these are happening on national levels, and really excited that Minnesota is diving into this work. It really is an umbrella term for a state-led multi-year plan. In Minnesota, we're looking at a 10-year plan on aging. And as I mentioned before, this doesn't just relate to folks who are working in aging. We're looking at public and private stakeholders. And this plan will help people, multi-sector plans help people to address needs of people who are aging and people with disabilities. It's really looking at breaking down administrative silos, both on state government levels as well as local levels. We want to look to mobilize funding sources and then also track impact to really know how we're being successful and ways that we can continue to improve. Next slide, please. This is also happening nationally under the Administration for Community Living. So since 2022, the Center for Healthcare Strategies has worked in partnership with a number of national foundations to really say we need a national plan on aging because really aging affects all different sectors. And we just looking at our demographics know that this work needs to happen. Next slide, please. All right, now we're going to watch that 14-minute video. It's really going to outline the pieces that are in existence in Minnesota, work done to date. And then after this video, I'll hand it over to Lydia to help us do a deep dive.
Peterson. I'm here today on behalf of Age-Friendly Minnesota Council to talk about Minnesota's multi-sector blueprint for aging. First, I'll be talking about what a multi-sector blueprint for aging is. The Blueprint for Aging is a strategic, cross-sector, 10-year framework for transforming infrastructure and the coordination of services to improve the lives of all Minnesotans as we age. So on this second slide, there's a graphic that shows the different agencies that are part of Minnesota's Age-Friendly Council. You have the Minnesota Department of Economic and Employment Development, Minnesota Department of Transportation, Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, the Minnesota Department of Commerce, the Metropolitan Council, the Minnesota Board on Aging, Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, the Minnesota Department of Human Services, and the Minnesota Department of Health. The blueprint is being developed not only with these agencies here, but also based on input from other state agencies, strong partner organizations, interested community representatives, and aging Minnesotans themselves. The whole process of developing the blueprint is done through a pretty transparent and rigorous stakeholder and partnership input process. We've held in-person regional exchanges. We've had surveys sent out to community members, partners, different state agencies, as well as up on the age-friendly website, asking people to provide their feedback and input. At the end of this presentation, I will share further opportunities on how you can provide your input on the blueprint. What's nice about the blueprint is that it extends beyond the scope of the traditional aging sectors. This helps us recognize that aging is an issue that affects all different sectors and industries. So when policies and initiatives are being put into place by those other agencies, they recognize how it affects Minnesotans as they age. Throughout all of this, our goal is really to be person-centered, equity-focused, and data-driven. Also, the blueprint is a living document and can be adjusted to shifting priorities. Now that I've shared what a multi-sector blueprint for aging is, I'd like to talk about the structure of the blueprint. Overarching the blueprint are 4 different domains. So here on slide 3, there is the main blue box with the multi-sector blueprint for aging. From that, you have 4 lines going down to 4 separate orange boxes that represent each of the different domains.
This $39 headlamp is taking the world by storm. Don't buy another flashlight until you've seen what this new headlamp can do. This U.S. Army engineer is bringing military...
Apologies for the commercial.
This next slide has a yellow box that is marked Strategy A, because under each of the domains, we have strategies. From the strategy box, you have 2 lines going to 2 green boxes representing the objectives, Objective 1 and Objective 2. And from those boxes, you see different blue boxes with tactic 1A, 1B, 1C, and 2A, 2B, 2C, showing that under each objective in the blueprint, you have tactic. Tactics are the actual work that will be done to achieve the different objectives or goals we've set for the blueprint. The number of strategies, objectives, and tactics will vary depending on the topic area. Developing strong tactics is vital to the success of the overall blueprint. So I'd like to spend some time talking about the different types of tactics. And on this slide 5, there's a list of the different types of tactics. One type is education and communications. Education could just be educating Minnesotans on the importance of planning for their long-term care needs. Communications could be something such as an expanded marketing campaign to ensure that everyone knows about the senior linkage line and the resources it can help connect people to. Tactics can also be different assessments. So doing a gap analysis or further data collection and evaluations in an area that we recognize we need to learn more about. Tactics can also be specific aging-related research. So perhaps there's an area where we do have a lot of data, but perhaps not data that's specific to the aging population. So recognizing that we'll need that in order to make the best decisions for Minnesotans as we age. Tactics can also be related to programs, perhaps piloting a new program or expanding a successful program. It can also be scaling up a program that's available currently in one region of Minnesota to ensure that it's available throughout all areas of Minnesota. Policies can also be tactics. For example, advocating for a new policy or changing an existing policy. Tactics can also be the creation of partnerships or work groups. Recognizing there are areas where multiple organizations or agencies are working towards the same goal. So coming together and creating a formal partnership to ensure that we're not duplicating work and we're sharing our resources effectively. Tactics can also just be recognizing that further planning and then implementation of that plan is needed. Remember, tactics build the foundation for the next 10 years worth of work. So there will be a balance of things that are accomplished in the short term, as well as the long term in the blueprint. Tactics also don't need to be new work necessarily. They can be work already underway by an organization or agency that aligns with the overall goals in the blueprint. Currently, Age Friendly Minnesota is looking for agencies and organizations to volunteer to be leads for tactics. If you haven't already been in touch with staff at the Age Friendly Minnesota Council, and you think there's an area of the blueprint where your organization or agency could be a leader of one of these action steps, please reach out so we can involve you in those conversations moving forward. So in the end, the final blueprint product will have 4 domains and several strategic focus areas. It will be written for organizational decision makers and legislators. It will have tactics, which, like I just shared, can be a variety of actions. Each tactic will have a designated lead entity that is responsible for implementing the work. The blueprint will also have metrics to track the progress and to ensure that the different tactics we are employing do lead to change and progress in the overall objectives that are set in the blueprint. In addition to the blueprint document, there's a digital storyboard that the public can view to see the work of the blueprint and kind of like walk through the different areas and aspects of the blueprint framework. We will also be creating a data dashboard that will be the place where those metrics for our progress are tracked. And people can see if the work we're doing is affecting the overall landscape that we have for Minnesotans as we age. Now that I've shared what a multi-sector blueprint for aging is, the structure of it, and where we are in developing the different aspects, and specifically where we are in developing tactics, I want to share the current framework that we have for the blueprint. On this slide 7, again, we have in the main slide a blue box that represents the multi-sector blueprint for aging, and 4 lines coming down from that to 4 different orange boxes that represent each of the 4 domains. The first one is connected communities. The second domain is emergency preparedness, individual rights, and safety. The third is optimizing care and support for longevity. And the fourth is economic security and vitality. Now I will go through each of the domains and let you know of the strategies that have been identified thus far for each. Under the first domain, connected communities, there are 5 strategies. The first is affordable housing for the lifespan. Next is multimodal transportation options. Another strategy is public spaces for all ages and seasons. Another one is social engagement. And the last strategy in this domain is long-term care as home, quality of life, quality of care. Just a reminder, with the structure of the blueprint, under each one of these 5 strategies, we have different objectives, and under each one of those objectives will be different tactics. Moving on to the second domain, which is emergency preparedness, individual rights and safety, there are 2 strategies for this domain. The first is inclusive emergency preparedness and response. and the other strategy is elder justice. On slide 10, we have the third domain, which is optimizing health and longevity. And there are 4 strategies that fit under this domain. The first is integrated social supports and healthcare. The next one is age-friendly healthcare access. There is also well-trained and well-compensated direct care workforce. And the last strategy in this domain is support for family, friend, and neighbor caregiving. That brings us to the 4th domain on slide 11, economic security and vitality. There are 2 strategies under this domain, affording aging and economic contributors. This concludes the different domains and strategies that have been identified for the Multisector Blueprint for Aging thus far. As a reminder, we're currently identifying tactics or the actual work that will be done under each of these areas. This slide has information on how you can learn more about the blueprint as well as provide your insights. You can learn more about the Age-Friendly Minnesota Council as well as the Multisector Blueprint for Aging by visiting the Age-Friendly Minnesota website, which is mn.gov/DHS/age, AGE, friendly, FRIENDLY-MN. This is where you can look through the site that has the storyline of the blueprint. Here you can provide your own input as to what is currently in the blueprint framework and provide ideas that you have for tactics, as well as express interest in leading a tactic for the blueprint. You can also learn more about Age-Friendly Minnesota in general and see a calendar of events by visiting AgeFriendlyMN, AgeFriendlyMN.org. This last slide is just a thank you for your time and attention to this matter. If you have any questions or would like to reach Age-Friendly staff, please email us at mn.dhs.agefriendlymn, AGEFRIENDLYMN at state.mn.us. I hope you have a great day.
All right, well, that was a lot of information about the Age-Friendly Blueprint, and we'll give Brenda a second to get out of the YouTube. Thanks for bearing with us for the YouTube commercial. I'd now like to hand it over to Lydia Morgan, who's been working intimately with Age-Friendly Minnesota efforts as well as the Blueprint. Lydia is going to kind of talk through, I'm very excited. We actually here on this call today, you are able to get a sneak peek along with us right now of some updates for where we're at with this Multisector Blueprint and kind of dive deep into one of the domains. So take it away, Lydia.
Thanks, Georgia. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be with you today. So I'm Lydia Morgan. I see a number of familiar names in the participant list. So nice to see those of you who I know and nice to virtually meet those of you who I haven't met before. Yeah, so I think some of this I'll go through pretty quickly with you because it repeats a little bit of what Nikki Peterson just shared in the video we watched, although that was some months ago at this point, and so much has happened since then. So it'll be fun to kind of fill in some of those generalities with some specifics that we've developed in the meantime. So again, these are the blueprints for domains, and I just wanted to mention a couple things related to these. So like a lot of age-friendly work, we recognize that there's so much overlap between these domains. So for example, while we have health in domain 3 that is intimately linked with housing, which lives under domain 1. So that's just how our lives are. And you know, how communities work and our kind of our whole person, you know, realities function. But for the sake of the work, we need to pull them apart so we can actually create plans. But we do recognize that, and that's true for all age-friendly work. And I also just wanted to mention that for those of you who have maybe worked with age-friendly before, we also have our 8 domains of livability or age-friendliness that are associated with the World Health Organization, AARP, Age-Friendly Communities Framework. And so those are domains, these are domains. So we kind of recognize that's a lot of domains to talk about, and they are different domains in name. But really, I think all the 8 domains of livability or age-friendliness are really embedded within these 4 domains that are part of Minnesota's multi-sector blueprint. But the reason that we have surfaced these specifically are because they're the result of the community engagement process that has led us to Minnesota's unique domains. But I just kind of wanted to make that distinction, that especially because we're using that same word, domain, but that we are kind of aware of those 2 coexisting, but also, you know, overlapping. So next slide, please. So a lot of people in Minnesota, including a number of you, have been part of this community engagement process that has led us to where we are at this point with the blueprint. So it's really been growing from the ground up in terms of getting community member and professional input into what need to be our priorities for the blueprint. So I just want to walk through a few of those key aspects. So how did we arrive at those 4 domains? So a statewide needs assessment of older adults was conducted in 2021 and 2022. So that's kind of in the upper left, but we had 100 targeted phone interviews. And that process, we were really trying to identify people of color, rural residents, low-income people. So we're really trying to hear from the people that are sometimes hard to hear from in just traditional community engagement measures. So we had worked with a small firm who has special expertise in that, and we had 100 one-on-one phone interviews. And then we also had a statewide survey. We had over 900 responses to that. And that was administered online. We had some administered in person in multiple languages. And then we had that same survey was administered to 300 tribal elders in the state, which was terrific. And so we got this nice pool of data through that process. And we should have a bullet here also for focus groups that were conducted around the state, including by Arrowhead and some of our other AAA, as well as some other partners. So we had focus groups also that were asked questions that were also organized around the same survey topics. So that was a lot of our community member input. And then we had our regional exchanges. So that's the next one down. And a lot of you were probably involved in those. Those were a little over a year ago. And that's where we were really digging into blueprint content specifically, an earlier iteration of it. So on September 29th, 2023, we had 7 in-person events held in 7 locations throughout the state at the same time, following the exact same format. So we could get this input from different regions, but organized around, you know, the same framework of discussion. And then we pooled all of that data that we gathered through that and analyzed it. And that was a really important piece of also developing our, refining our blueprint domains. And then I'll just mention we had and still have ongoing online forums and surveys where anyone is welcome to submit input. Our team has been meeting with our key partners, state boards, commissions, many state agencies, subject matter experts, thought leaders across many different topics, many different sectors. And then some of you may be aware of our Age-Friendly Minnesota Council. We have those meetings, which are available live stream. And then the recordings are also available on the Age Friendly Minnesota website. But the council regularly digs into Blueprint content as well and has informed the work that's been done so far. So it's really, we've tried to make the community engagement process really robust, but it's also still ongoing. So I just wanted to kind of give that background. Next slide, please. So we just wrapped up a series of 4 action team convenings. And again, I saw some of you there yesterday and have seen you at previous ones. So thank you so much for being there. So our last one was just yesterday in St. Paul, where we talked about connected communities. So we did our first domain 1 we did last in order. And so we've been doing these over the course of a little over a month. They've all been held in person in St. Paul. And these were really targeted more at subject matter experts, state agency representatives, community organizations, to really dive deep into each domain and to really focus on the tactic level. In the video we just watched, Nikki really talked about those tactics. And so I think actually just given the time where we're at and what you've already seen in the video, I'm actually going to jump right now into some specifics related to the tactics, because that's what's kind of new and exciting, and to make sure we have time for that instead of more background. So I'm going to share a couple of things here. So first, what I'm going to show you is our, let's see. So some of you who have been at an action team convening, this will look very familiar to you, but at each convening, so each convening focused on a specific domain, we had long documents. This one is for domain 2, so that's the one we're going to kind of look at today. So we had, 30 plus page documents, and they're organized by, so we have again, the different layers. So we have the domain is emergency preparedness, individual rights and safety. And then we have our strategies. And then under each strategy, our objective. And then the tactics are really the how piece. How are we going to implement this blueprint and achieve our objectives? And so every convening, we had tables where people could choose which table they wanted to sit at, and each table would talk about essentially one objective. And so this one was under strategy A. We had a table talking about community education related to emergency preparedness and response. And so they would look at all the tactics in this particular area. And we had one for integrated emergency response systems. So that table would really dig into all of these possible tactics. And we had a facilitated discussion process to really walk people through all of these possible tactics. And so we had many tables, all focused on specific topics within a domain. So it's just really energizing, fun to see people come around the table and go in depth on these topics. And then it kind of culminated with a voting process. So based on what these different groups discussed, what they heard from others that were reporting around them, could vote on the tactics that seemed the highest priority within a domain. And so we worked through, for every domain, we worked through these really long documents. We tried to break it down into manageable chunks, but it really is a lot of content. And so this, if you're interested, is it's online to view at this website. And if you don't have the URL, we can put it in the chat, or it'll be in the follow-up email. But this is just kind of an FYI, but every domain, all the background materials, I had just clicked on the tactic ideas. That's what this is. So if you're interested in exploring those, but what we're excited to kind of share today is for domain 2, I'm going to show you the priority tactics that emerged from that domain action convening. And these haven't been widely released yet. This is kind of a soft launch. So we have exclusive access to that. So I'm going to pull that up. Okay, so this is emergency preparedness, individual rights, and safety. So again, for all of the people who attended that convening, These are the tactics that got the most votes, and we'll go objective by objective. And I just want to say, kind of as a disclaimer, which is stated in this introduction, which I won't read in its entirety, but these are not of the official final tactics for the blueprint. They're a really important step, but there's a little bit more of analysis and kind of vetting before we really have our initial tactics. But this is a huge step forward, but it's not kind of final blueprint content. So just want to say that too. So under strategy A, inclusive and integrated emergency preparedness and response, under the community education objective, we have communication access for all related to emergency responders, translation, transcription, and people with hearing loss. I just want to pause real quick and say, the document that we were just looking at, where we had that really long list of tactics, participants at the convenings could also suggest new tactics to add to the list of possibilities. And so if that's the case, then it's indicated as new, but otherwise these little numbers correspond to that big tactics document, so we can reference back to that. And then the next ones are the group combined 2 tactics into a single tactic, conduct a statewide emergency planning campaign, and getting information to emergency responders via a toolbox or form. And emergency contact information for law enforcement should be placed by the front door, and develop a standard list of information to assist responders. This domain, we had a lot of great attendees, but I just want to mention that we were so excited to have, we had fire chiefs from numerous cities around the state, and they were kind of interspersed at a few different tables, and they were able to provide just really, we were really glad they were engaged in this work, because they provide a really unique, important vantage point and set of insights and experience. So that was terrific. And that's part of the really exciting thing about the blueprint, is you're bringing them around the table with all kinds of other people who always work in aging, and other people who don't, but whose work touches aging. So really getting people around the table, it's just very cool. So one last one here, fund organizations to educate all professionals about supported decision-making. And supported decision-making is actually its own objective later in this domain. But that team wanted to bring it up under the community education objective, because it has to do with educating professionals across different sectors about supported decision-making, which is kind of like an alternative to approaches like guardianship that really provide the individual with more autonomy and choice. So the second one objective is integrated emergency response systems. So again, we have communication access rising to the top as a top priority. Second, we have develop integrated emergency preparedness planning for community members living with a disability or older adults. 3, work to expand across Minnesota the model developed by Care Resource Connection, which reduces emergency calls for lift assistance, both in long-term care and in the community. I'm not going to read every word for the sake of time, but this will be available for all of you soon. 4, identify and be prepared to assist individuals who need extra assistance during an emergency. So this team touched on especially solos, who are people who are kind of growing older without that traditional family support network. And there's a growing number of people like that in Minnesota and everywhere. So it's a lot of things having to do with people who might be potentially vulnerable in an emergency, being able to identify those people and also be ready to assist those individuals in an emergency. Strategy B is elder justice. So objective 1, protection from all forms of abuse and exploitation. Increase resources and support to county adult protective services and tribal nations to build their capacity to identify and support adults who are vulnerable to maltreatment. 2, expand funding for crisis shelter services beyond intimate partner violence. 3, involve community action partnerships to develop community appropriate services. And 4, advocate for more federal approaches to ending financial exploitation. And then our second Objective is supported decision-making, which I touched on before. So this group kind of bundled a couple of tactics under one large topic of explore ways that supported decision-making can be financially viable for all Minnesotans. And I don't mean to breeze through it too much, but also I want to make sure there's time for the rest of the content in the webinar, and also because I don't want to just do too much reading to you all. But objective 3 is long-term care rights. So what emerged here was streamlining transitions when the level of care changes, such as someone transitioning from hospital to home health care. 2 is ensuring resources are in plain language, age appropriate, and easily accessible. Objective 4, enhanced access to justice. We have mediation and community dispute resolution programs, so kind of elevating those as a resource to be used as an alternative to the traditional legal system. 2 is expanding education campaign regarding emeritus attorneys. And 3 is family preservation policies. So again, if you are interested, you'll be able to kind of explore these in depth when they're fully released very soon. But again, this is just kind of an initial early preview of some of the priority tactics. So this is really exciting. So this is the kind of the work that we'll be doing for every domain. And that's going to be building out the tactics for the blueprint. So thank you for listening to that. And if you want to jump back into the slides, I'm just about done. But I wanted to mention that, and I think George is going to talk about it at the end too, is that when we talk about the action teams, so they're going to be, we call their action team convenings, but the action teams are still being developed and identified. So if you are interested in being part of an action team that's working on any of these domains to implement the blueprint work going forward, you are welcome to do that. We encourage you to do that. So there's different ways to let us know about that, and Georgia will let you know at the end. But those are in formation right now, and we'd love to have people's engagement. That's what it's all about. So I will turn it back over to you, Georgia. Thank you, everyone.
So much, Lydia. I think that sneak peek has been amazing. Just to see the breadth and depth of work that can be contained under this blueprint. I think that's what strikes me as most impressive of how we're structuring both at a statewide level and a local level, really boiling it down. So kudos to you and the team that's been working on that. And I'll just reiterate what Lydia said around, we are the Minnesotans whom this is affecting, and we here on this webinar and elsewhere are the ones who are doing the work. And so really encouraging ongoing engagement. So Brenda, you can go to the slide where we start talking about what it's looking like here in our region. So these slides will be sent out. Don't feel like you're missing out on anything. You'll have more time to dive deep later on. So just a very quick flavor of what's been happening here in the Arrowhead region in our last 10 minutes. And I do want to save a little bit of time for questions. You go to the next slide, Brenda. So age-friendly Minnesota grants, click through, there's a couple graphics here. Sorry for that. I didn't realize that was happening. We have about $6 million in Minnesota that's been invested in age-friendly grants. We as an area agency on aging have been awarded technical assistance provider grants so we can really champion some of this work. Statewide, we have 91 grantees who were recipients for the first round. Next slide, please. Regionally, we had for our first round a little over $845,000, which has been invested in the Arrowhead. That's been super fun to see. It has really allowed communities to customize what they need the money invested into, and these have not been for any types of direct service. They've been planning and infrastructure grants. The grants range anywhere from $7,500 to $50,000. 10 of our 15 community grantees applied for expansions. There was $500,000 in request, of which $425,000 was granted. Next slide, please. Here's a quick sample. There are so many great things that have been happening. If you want to know something in your region, I know we have some grantees who are on here. Cook County Public Health really launched their age-friendly initiative to look at joining the AARP network. Aiken County or Aiken Public Schools did some fun stuff with maker spaces where they were creating spaces for older adults and students to work together on projects like woodworking, welding, embroidery, things like that. Northspan developed a returnships toolkit, which was designed to recruit and retain older adults in the workforce, kind of like internships, but for older adults or folks who have left the workforce, to kind of be an onboard to get folks back in. And then, of course, you can't talk about age-friendly without talking about pickleball. In Aurora, they did receive some dollars to help build a pickleball court. And kind of looking at that built environment. So there's a lot more of projects that were funded. You can look on the Age Friendly Minnesota website to get a sense of that. Next slide, please. Round 2 just wrapped up, I believe, last week. What I learned and see is that momentum is being built and age-friendly projects are in high demand. While we know not all these projects will be funded, it does show to me it's a great testimony that communities are really wrapping their heads around what kinds of projects or scope of work can be funded under an age-friendly umbrella, what age-friendly it is. So I think this is just kind of one metric that shows how age-friendly momentum has been building. We have, there was over $11 million in requests for age-friendly funding, with only 1.3 million to grant out. So while that is difficult, it's a difficult pill to swallow. It is also, noting that we know that the demand is there. And we want to continue to advocate for other ways that we can move age-friendly work forward, including additional funding from our state legislature. Next slide, please. So ways for you to get involved, and then we'll take about the last 3-4 minutes for questions. So we have, like I said, Lydia just gave you guys a sneak peek. There is going to be, Age Friendly Minnesota is going to have a webinar on December 17th. We don't have the info yet on how to log or how to register for that and log in. But if you do sign up for the Age Friendly Minnesota newsletter, that should be included in there. Or you can reach out to me and I will share information with you once that is out there. Reach out to me, another way to get involved, or your local area agency on aging if you're not from our region, to connect on work and opportunities in your community. I think, age-friendly work, there's so many different ways to get involved. And so just talking to local area agencies on aging can really be an expert there. You can look at the Age Friendly Minnesota website to dive deeper into any one of those domains. You can still submit some of your comments, and those really are recorded. That's why Lydia was saying there's 30+ page documents that was talking about different tactics. And you do start to see themes emerge and tactics combined. So this is a living, working document of which we can all take part. We really want folks to think about, you here today, what the work that you're doing in your day-to-day basis, what domain is that falling under, what strategy and what tactics are you doing, and how can you plug into one of those action teams? It could be in big ways or small ways. So really think about you or people in your community. I love Lydia talking about the emergency response and preparedness and getting first responders involved, and ways to bridge those gaps. Second to last is contact your state representative asking for permanency of the Age Friendly Minnesota Council, which is scheduled to sunset in 2027. We know that this blueprint work, is important, that it is established. We do hope that it will continue, but we do need that Age Friendly Council to be the structure and kind of the backbone for this to continue. So just kind of pay attention to that and think about ways you can advocate for ongoing age friendly work and hopefully funding. And then last, you can attend the in-person Minnesota Leadership Council on Aging Summit. There actually is going to be a virtual option on December 10th. And I don't know the times for that, but we can put the link in the chat there, as well as an in-person summit on the 12th. And I believe, is that my last slide, Brenda? It is. Thank you. So we have, feel free, you can take yourself off camera. There is my contact information there. Feel free to just unmute if you have a question to ask, or feel free to put something in the chat. Any questions, comments? All right, so I guess we might be able to hop off a couple minutes early if folks don't have any specific questions. I see Brenna just popped in the chat there, the Minnesota Leadership Council on Aging link. I believe that's for the summit.
Yep.
I really appreciate it. I feel like this was a great, it's kind of a niche topic, so I appreciate the broad group of people that have showed up today to learn about it. And please reach out if you have other questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you at upcoming webinars.
Thanks, Georgia. I just want to say thank you to our presenters for today for joining us and sharing their wealth of knowledge. I know we are thankful for every one of you who are joining us today because we know this is such a busy season as we approach the holidays and things like that. We will be sharing information from this session both on Facebook and LinkedIn later in this next week. We'll also be sending out a link to the recording so you can share this information with friends, family, and others who might benefit from it. So our upcoming, just a reminder that we have our upcoming webinars coming up. We've got, Georgia, we've got one on age-friendly businesses coming up in January, on January 15th. We also have one this next month on housing and older adults, exploring the continuum of options. And we've got a really exciting one coming up in February on long-term care options with Marjorie Bola from our Senior Linkage Line.